Hey everybody, this is Andrea Jenson from the Cash Flow CFO, and you're listening to the Cash Flow CFO Podcast, the show that explores the financial side of running a business for people who want to maximize profitability and scale with confidence. If you want to make smart financial decisions based on data and put more of your hard-earned profits into your pocket, this is the podcast for you. This episode of the Cash Flow CFO podcast is brought to you by the Cash Flow CFO. Did you know that on average, business owners have up to 84% of their personal net worth tied up in their business? Our virtual CPAs and CFOs, as well as accounting and bookkeeping experts, empower business owners just like you to make big leaps that help them maximize profitability and scale with confidence. Visit thecashflowcfo.com for more information, and thank you for listening.
Hello. Hey, everyone. It's Andrea, and our guest for today is Dennis Carlson. Dennis is an experienced business owner, entrepreneur, and sales and marketing executive in the employee benefits industry. In 2009, after building the employee benefits, sales, and service division for a commercial insurance agency, Dennis founded Bespoke Benefits, an employee benefits and executive benefits consulting firm, which was acquired in 2017. Currently, Dennis leads the executive benefits practice in the Western U.S. for Marsh McLennan Agency. In addition to helping employers create the best employee benefit packages to attract and retain top talent, he advises on executive benefit solutions to meet the needs of small and mid-sized business owners, the C-suite, and executives. Over the span of his career, Dennis has served as a sales and marketing leader, advisor, and subject matter expert to insurance carriers, agencies, nonprofits, and tech companies. Dennis is also a proud past president of the Sacramento chapter of the National Association of Benefits and Insurance Professionals. And when he's not advising clients on employee and executive benefits, you can find him on a small mountain stream, fly rod in hand, protecting the resident trout. Welcome to the show, Dennis.
Thank you. Really appreciate you having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on. I know we were chatting a little bit before we hit that record button about some of the really underutilized, understood components of executive benefits and looking at how you build out some of those cost savings or different alternative financing for paying for the benefits. And we all know that sometimes those benefits can really come with a hefty price tag. And it sometimes turns business owners away from offering a competitive package to attain that top talent while still balancing, that cost has to get passed through somewhere, right? So how do you find that happy medium? So I'm excited to dive into all of that on today's show and this conversation for our listeners. This is going to be really good because it's not a very talked about conversation. We work with hundreds of business owners and all of their different providers, if you will, and nobody's having this conversation. So Dennis, I'm excited. Thank you so much for being here. Before we dive into that, I wanted to give everybody a little teaser of what's coming down the pipeline because it's so good. I'd love to learn a little bit more about you. How did you get started in the insurance industry?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I know you've talked to other insurance folks on this podcast, and I've really enjoyed listening, by the way. You are really doing a service for small and mid-sized businesses, just really picking apart at all the different aspects of what goes into making a business successful, not just in cost savings, but also how to think strategically about the future of business. So but just kudos to you on what you're doing with the podcast.
Thank you.
So when I, talking about how I got into insurance, my story is pretty similar to most, just in that I never planned to be in insurance. I didn't know when I got out of college and had my first career, which was in the music industry, which we don't need to get too deep into on this podcast, but it makes me sound a little bit cooler to let people know that I was in the music industry for a brief period. I didn't know this was a job then. I didn't know being an insurance broker for businesses was was a career, certainly. I fell into it as a marketing person. I was a marketing person in the music industry, working for record labels, working for an artist management firm. And when that was kind of blowing up in the bad way, the music industry was going through a really rough patch. And my wife and I had our first child, and I was looking at what could be next for me. I took a marketing job at an insurance agency. And that marketing job turned into me getting my insurance license, and then figuring out, you mentioned it in my bio there, that figuring out that I could build an employee benefits practice at an insurance agency that didn't already have one. So they did commercial insurance like workers' comp and professional liability and property insurance, but they didn't do a whole lot of employee benefits, your medical, dental, vision, life, disability, those types of things. So I was able to kind of take my marketing experience first and just start talking to businesses, and then kind of learn as I went how employee benefits worked and that whole side of things. And that's about 20 years ago now. So I kind of landed in it, and it's been an amazing career for me and for my family, and I'm always learning. There's always something new to learn every day in insurance.
Yeah, absolutely. I know running several businesses myself, there's always something new that you're getting a phone call going, oh yeah, we got to change this or update this. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Nope. It's part of the process, right? I'd rather know than not know and be caught, what is that? Be proactive instead of reactive.
That's right. Yep.
I might grumble about the call, but I know at the end it's what's best.
And having insurance is the most proactive thing you can do. I mean, yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's so great. Thank you for sharing a little bit about how you got into the industry. Sure. And I love that, because I think as a marketing background, right, you come into this and you realize, oh, there's a lot of opportunity. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I often think about this with the finance industry. It's an outdated, if you will, in some
absolutely
aspects.
Correct you if you're wrong. No, on insurance, yeah, it's even more outdated than the finance industry. Yeah,
you probably saw a lot of opportunity there of like, oh, if I just did this, this, and this,
that's right,
I could be so successful, make the company so successful, and it's a win-win for everybody that's involved.
That's absolutely right. No, that's so most of my career, I've had the opportunity to, but let me preface this by saying I'm not a technologist. I'm not a coder, but I've always been able to leverage technology a little bit ahead, or even sometimes way ahead of where the rest of the insurance industry is, because the insurance industry is so far behind. I mean, frankly, the bar has just been so low in the industry. And that isn't just because, it's an old school industry with old school people. It's a highly regulated industry. It is a financial industry. So there's a lot of moving parts. And so it's hard to get these big ships. A lot of the insurance companies are historic legacy insurance companies that have done a great job, pay claims, and are still around. So thinking about how you get those companies to move more quickly and more efficiently. So yeah, I've really been able to do a lot, especially when I was a small business owner, when I owned my own small business, do a lot with technology that really kind of at least put me on par with competition that was much larger than me, or sometimes let me pull ahead. And I'm still seeing that 20 years in. I'm still an advisor to technology companies in the insurance industry that are still trying to crack the code on how do we make this industry more efficient. And that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love that. Innovation is what keeps it fresh, right? That's why we do what we do, is we have that opportunity to find those different solutions and bring them to the market, and actually I'd love to dive into, that's a good segue into some of the things that I'd love to talk to you about. We work with a lot of high net worth business owners. We have a lot of listeners that run the gamut of, some of them are, just starting and building, and others are established. And, hopefully everybody's working towards having a professionally managed team so that it's not owner operator. So when the day comes, they want to exit the business, the valuation is going to be much higher for them. But when you have a team-led and managed company, a professionally managed company, you've got a C-suite, right? Or whatever version you're at that, growth level that you're at in your business. And I think one of the things that I'd love to chat with you about is what are some of the things that business owners don't know is out there for both them and their C-suite, and what should they be looking at each different level
Sure.
as they continue to grow and scale their organization? Yeah.
And I'll speak towards kind of where I think you're pointing me is towards when you actually have a number of C-suite, or just, we broadly would say executives, but that could mean anything from an owner to a CEO, CFO, COO, to a salesperson that is a really key employee that is a rainmaker for the company, and everything in kind of in between. But talking about a subset of the total population, right? A subset. And so when you look at that as a business owner or as just a CEO running a business, what probably the first thing you should be thinking about is related as it relates to benefits, as it relates to attracting and retaining those employees, is, are the benefits that we offer today working for that population specifically? And sometimes, when you're talking, frankly, sometimes when you're talking to human resources, to HR, the pushback will be, well, we want to do the same thing for everyone, right? We don't want to do something special for our executives. And really what you can think about as one of those executives, especially when you're in the decision-making seat, is actually taking a step back and saying, well, no, the question really is, are we being actually equitable for those executives? And I'll just give you a couple of examples of what I mean by that. So one of the first things we do when anyone wants to engage talking about executive benefits and kind of what does that mean is we focus on what we call benefits restoration. So what we do is we look at the employee benefits that you have today and specifically look at those benefits that are related to compensation. So we kind of assume, right, that compensation's maybe already in line with the market. That's the easy one, right? You're going to try to attract executive. Well, pay them well. Pay them at least the market rate, if not better, if you want to be an employer of choice. That's kind of usually taken care of in scenarios that we're walking into. They're looking for other things they can do. So now let's look at those benefits that are tied to compensation. And there's really three primary employee benefits that are tied to compensation. It's life insurance. A lot of times that's a multiple of salary that you have as a base life insurance policy for your whole employee base. Disability insurance, which is, in my opinion, probably the most important insurance an individual can have, because it pays you a paycheck if you're sick or hurt and can't work. There's nothing else like it in the world. And I have a really strong conviction that every company should be offering disability insurance to their employees, and that employees should understand what it is and why they have it. And then the third one is your retirement plan. So usually that would be like a 401k plan. And there are deferral amounts that companies usually target. Like, we hope every employee puts away 5% or 6% of their income. Well, there's limits on a 401k. The federal limit this year, I think, is $23,000. I'm not a 401k advisor, but I know enough to know that there are limits that the IRS imposes on what you can put in. And so when you think about those higher earning executives, those three benefits that are tied to compensation are not necessarily equitable for the highly comped folks. So when you look at life insurance and say, well, we wanted everyone to have a 2 or 3 times salary benefit. That was our goal. Well, the insurance policy you probably have, and anyone listening, if you have a group insurance policy with a life insurance policy, you can go look at it. It probably caps out anywhere from $50,000 a year in maximum benefit, or not per year, rather a death benefit, to maybe $250,000 or $300,000 in death benefit. Now, that might be 2 or 3 times salary in that range for the bulk of the employees. But when we're talking about the executive population, probably it's missing the mark for a number of those executives. It's not 2 or 3 times. So we want to look at closing the gap on life insurance for those executives to get them up to the same level. Remember, this is about making it equitable for them, not giving them something extra. We're just trying to get them back up to that level of 2 to 3 times salary in life insurance. On disability insurance, similar process. We're looking at, we wanted to replace 60% of income is what a typical base policy would pay for all employees. It would replace 60% of their pre-disability earnings. But it's capped at a certain amount per month, maybe $6,000 per month or $7,500 per month in benefit. Well, again, for the CEO, CFO, that salesperson you're trying to recruit, if they were sick or hurt and couldn't work, could they get by on 60% of their wages with a cap of $6,000 or $7,500 per month? Maybe they could, but if they're making $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 per month or more, we wouldn't expect that they would be able to get by on that. And we really intended for them to have 60% of their income covered as well. So again, putting in an executive disability plan in to close that gap. And then finally, on the retirement side, you're looking at 401k plan that maybe you have an employer match. So maybe you can put at least the IRS maximum away every year. But if you don't have a match, or if the IRS isn't allowing you to put away as much as you want, and you want to be able to put away 6% or maybe even more than 6%, then we look at like a deferred comp strategy. And so these are above and beyond. These are non-qualified plans, 401k. And your people know this better than I do, the qualified plan versus non-qualified. So the 401k is a qualified plan. It's, you can put tax-free dollars into that plan and it grows tax deferred. A qualified plan has some different rules. A non-qualified plan has different rules around it, but allows those executives to put away additional income that they will take later on because they want to be able to put away that full 6% that they can't really accomplish with their 401k. That's what we call benefits restoration. That's just getting people up to their level. So now we're, up to that point, we're not even really talking about what I would call the rewards piece of executive benefits, which is what most people think of. But I like to start with that restoration component so that employers really can start thinking in terms, and executives can start thinking in terms of, what do we already have in place? And once we understand that, then we might make suggestions about, well, instead of putting in those gap policies to cover the additional life or cover additional disability, maybe we should just beef up the underlying group policy, because that's a less expensive way to accomplish maybe 90% of what we wanted to do or 70% of what we wanted to do, depending on the incomes that we're looking at. It's a much less expensive way to go and beef up that base plan. And then if we still have a gap, it's a smaller gap. So now we're paying less for that to cover that smaller gap for that life and disability program. And then, of course, with the 401k, we might be able to find out that with the 401k, that if we put in an employer match, it actually would save us enough because it would allow us to actually put away the contributions that we want to be able to put in that plan. Again, without putting in a deferred comp program and hiring an administrator and all those things. Maybe it's just about doing like an automatic enrollment or that employer match that helps us pass that non-discrimination testing that, every executive hates to get that check back at the end of the year when maybe they've quote unquote overfunded their 401k. Mm-hmm. So I'll stop there, but that's kind of where we start with that planning process.
Yeah, I love that. I think that makes so much sense because a lot of times I think we look at, well, we want to be number one, competitive with what we're paying, but there's so many more components that go into a comp package. And so I think that this is great information, just kind of like, this is the baseline, right? This is what we want to get you up to. And I don't know that very many business owners do that calculation, right? Where you were saying, yes, you want to have 3 times, the salary. Are we hitting that for everybody? And so it does take some, this is where I think a lot of business owners, this is where your fractional CFO can step in and help run these calculations so that you then take this data and give it to somebody, like what Dennis is talking about here. And he can then say, okay, based off of, all of this information, here are my recommendations. So it's that collaboration between, your fractional CFO, your benefits, and all of the other, retirements and different programs that you're putting into place. So I love this. I think this is great. And I think a lot of our listeners are probably going, oh, I've never thought of it this way, or I've never done that calculation to see, is this an equitable plan that we have in place?
Yeah, that's right. And you're right. That data sits with finance. Typically, they maybe haven't leveraged it for this purpose, but that's usually where we're going.
Start scaling with confidence today. The Cash Flow CFO is a full-service accounting and fractional CFO firm. So it goes without saying that our financial experts are phenomenal at number crunching. But more than that, they are expert communicators who will connect all those complicated financial dots in a way that just makes sense. We don't wait in the wings and check in every so often either. With our boutique approach, we position ourselves front and center, watching over every dollar that comes in and out of your business as if it was our own. So if your business is making money and you're ready to take it to the next level, but you're not sure you completely understand your numbers, and you're looking for that trusted guide to help you build a roadmap to reach your financial goals, it sounds like we would be a great fit. Visit thecashflowcfo.com and let's get started empowering you to build and scale your business the way you want to today.
Again, when you talk about the executives, so we're talking about things tied to compensation, right? Life, disability, retirement plan, all tied to compensation. Another key that whether you're either the CFO or one of the executives kind of thinking about, okay, well, I'll go get the salary data and I'll then analyze it, is we always make sure to ask for the other income line. So we have base salary, but we also want to know about commissions, K1, if we can get that. I'm always impressed if somebody can actually, give us that information early on in the relationship, but K1 or bonuses, because again, when you go back to, especially on that disability policy, which again is so important, if you don't know what the additional income is, then you're not really sure what you're covering. You say, oh, yeah, this executive makes $10,000 a month. Great. That's a fantastic salary. Oh, but they get another, on average, $20,000 a month, but it's paid as a quarterly bonus that we don't include because it doesn't come in. It's not on our normal payroll report, So come to find out, this executive is really at $30,000 a month. So there's no way the base policies that are going to cover them anywhere near the 60% coverage that we were hoping for. They're going to probably be more at whatever, I'm not going to do the math in my head, but let's call it 20%. Well, I don't know about you, but I don't care what you make. It's hard to live off of your 20% of your take home pay. So it's really important when you're doing those calculations to look at the whole picture. And that really typically comes into play with your executives rather than, the rest of your team maybe doesn't have any variable compensation. So it doesn't really impact them or impact that conversation, but make sure you're capturing that variable comp, whatever it is, whatever the source is, because that can be covered as well. And a lot of times people don't know that, oh, you can cover my bonuses, you can cover my K1, you can cover my stock options. These are all things that you can actually purchase coverage for that you should be aware of.
Yeah, absolutely. So for all of our listeners, this is really important because you want to not only attract the top talent, you want to retain them. And so, this is just a kind of one piece of putting that in place, because you also want to build these costs into your business model. And so on one hand, yes, we have to get the best of the best out there so that your company is in good hands as you're, taking your hands off the wheel as the business owner. You've got that management layer in place, but you also want to make sure that you as much forward information as you can get as you're setting your pricing, as you're setting all of your different budget line items. These are things you want to be thinking about and including from the get-go, even if you don't have that high level salary yet on your org chart. These are things that you want to be training your business model to be able to absorb. So as the incremental revenue increases, as you're growing the company, you want to be able to say, okay, I'm allocating the right percent into attracting and retaining this management layer that I'm going to need as we, as your revenue increases, your org chart is going to organically increase as well, right? So, So I think this is so good. I just wanted to kind of tie that all together for our listeners, because some people might be listening and going, well, I don't have a management level layer yet in my business.
That's right. Yeah.
But you will, you keep doing the right things and you will.
And for those folks, if you don't have a management layer already, maybe you're the sole owner and the only kind of true executive, or maybe you have a small executive team, but maybe multiple founders or something like that. When we look at executive benefits, I mentioned the benefits restoration. The other piece, so I break this down into when I talk to clients and when I really give them the kind of the whole view of executive benefits, I break it into 3 R's, restoration being the first R. The second R is rewards. So those are the typical kind of when I say typical, they're completely custom, but when people think of executive benefits, they think of like rewards programs, whether that's everything from like a golfing membership to, concierge medicine to, anything in between, any kind of special rewards. But the third R is risk. So really, what are the risks to your business related to the people in your business? So related to the executives. So in the case of an owner, or maybe an owner with another partner, they're thinking about maybe like a buy-sell agreement. And actually, executive benefits kind of covers into the buy-sell agreement and what we also call key person. So I just mentioned on a buy-sell agreement because a number of small businesses have more than one owner, right? They may have maybe a partnership. Well, as you know, maybe having dealt with this before, if one of those partners passes away unexpectedly, those shares of that company are kind of left there for the other owner to purchase. And sometimes there aren't funds to purchase those shares. And if that other owner is married, those shares would go then to the spouse. And now you have a new business partner, right? And so every business in that situation should certainly have a buy-sell agreement. But if you have a buy-sell agreement and it's not funded, you're not going to be able to buy those shares from that spouse. So think about having a business owner with a buy-sell agreement that says, here's what happens if one of us passes away unexpectedly, here's how we value the business, and here's the basic valuation, metric that we use. And then it's automatic that you're going to purchase those shares from my surviving spouse that would have inherited those shares, if that's the case, or kids, or whatever it is. And that's all in a planned document, but then you can fund that with life insurance. That's a very typical funding strategy for that buy-sell agreement, is to say, okay, we're going to purchase life insurance policies on each other so that when this unfortunate day comes, if it ever does, we know that I can just purchase those shares and it's clean and it's simple. We think about the same thing with disability insurance, because you may not pass away unexpectedly, but you may become sick or injured and unable to work anymore, which might just have the exact same impact on the business as if you've passed away. And so then you also can do like a lump sum disability payment back to the business. And so thinking through those things, we couch those under executive benefits because they're related to executives and typically funded with some type of risk product like an insurance policy for those executives. And then the third one under that same category is what we call key employee insurance. So it's not for an owner, it's for that individual employee who, that if something happened to them unexpectedly, sick or hurt and can't work, or passed away unexpectedly, that what would it cost the business to rehire, retrain, lost income because maybe they were one of the top salespeople. And so there are ways to protect yourself from that risk. And they're pretty inexpensive. Those types of policies are just like basic term insurance. Usually these aren't really complicated policies, relatively expensive compared to what you're actually covering. And so we want clients typically thinking about that, especially like small businesses that maybe could not absorb the loss of their number one salesperson or their business partner automatically. And so really budgeting that in to make sure that in those unfortunate circumstances, they know what the next step is. They're not scrambling to figure out, can we even keep the business open because we lost one employee? We're not talking about 20. We're talking about a single employee at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. And these are some of the conversations that you should be having as, when your business is at, under $1 million, this probably isn't such a big conversation. If you're running a $10 million company, this is a absolute necessity of a conversation.
That's
because you're always thinking, the CFO's role is the what ifs, right? Let's build a plan and a strategy and put it in place for the what ifs. And when you look at the cost benefit of exactly what you're talking about, right? This is a no-brainer, because when you start, as you're ramping up this company, you lose your salesperson or somebody that's a key deliverable, person that delivers on what it is you're selling. That's going to have a huge impact. And the runway to replace that is, it could be 3, 6, 9 months up to a year, depending on the role and all the different nuances of that. So it's the proactive versus reactive conversation.
Yeah. And often we see, what tells you that this is important is we'll see when there's venture funding coming in, or sometimes even private equity funding coming in, but typically in venture where there's just some, they just want to mitigate risk wherever they can. They require a key person policy like that sometimes for the founders, but sometimes for those top salespeople or whoever it is. They'll require that. So our clients will come to us and say, hey, we're contractually obligated to put this in. And that's where, when you hear that, I know maybe a lot of the folks listening aren't venture funded and they're like, well, that doesn't apply to me. No, the reason those people do it is because they're really smart and they want to mitigate that risk ahead of time. And that's where I kind of point to say, hey, look, this is pretty common practice in people who manage risk for a living, and who are, trying to create long-term profitability. It's really every small business owner should be thinking about these things. And, it's one of those things that nobody wants to deal, it's easy to push off and easy to not think about. But when you look at it from, like you said, the CFO perspective and the risk management perspective, it's a little colder calculation, right? It doesn't have to be emotional. It doesn't have to be about, thinking of your own demise. That's, not where we want to make people go with this, but just mitigating that risk and then putting that policy in a drawer and kind of can forget about it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I remember we were doing our estate planning, and I was like, I have to think about all this stuff right now. But hey, it's just this whole conversation is so necessary. And I love that we're having it. And I love that you're bringing these topics to, mainstream conversation. And for all of our listeners, this is information that, if you're not already thinking about it, it's probably time that you do, and you have somebody, reach out to Dennis, reach out to who you work with for your other benefits. If they don't offer this type of higher level strategies and options, right? You've got resources. We'll link all your info, Dennis, in the show notes for our listeners. But I just, it's important. It's that piece, like, you just don't want to have to deal with this and not have it in place.
That's right. Yeah.
So yeah, it's so important. And then we're going to have a part 2 of our conversation here, and
Great.
It will be a separate podcast. But there's so much that I would love to talk about with the different types of funding, all of these different types of policies and plans and things that I'm sure the majority of business owners don't even know what's available to them, that they can implement in their business and be able to, like, you're so much more competitive when you have these things in place, and you're just going to get that much better of talent and a happy team. And they're just going to really feel well taken care of by you having all of these additional, ways to compensate them and reward them for, what a great job they're taking of your organization and of your business. So, Dennis, if that's okay with you, I'd love to just put a teaser out there for part 2 of this conversation.
No, it's an important conversation. And I love talking to CFOs about financing of healthcare in their organizations. And a lot of times they're they're surprised that they're getting to have that conversation because it's the first time they've ever had it. They haven't either engaged or been brought into it. Usually it's like, oh, that's an HR conversation, but we're talking about the money. We're not necessarily talking about the people side. We're talking about how it's financed, and CFOs definitely need to be a part of that conversation. So love to have that with you.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much. This has been a great conversation. I know I've learned a little bit. I always am, I could talk business all day because there's just so much, like, you bring in all the different experts in their field and they tell you something and you're like, oh, I never thought of it that way. Or I did, so I hope all of our listeners also got some ahas, took some notes, and got some great info of things that they can look at implementing into their business.
Awesome. Well, it's been a real pleasure, Andrea. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. And for all of our listeners who want to learn more about Dennis and what he does, we will link all of his different ways to get a hold of him in the show notes. And, reach out, guys. Don't be shy about these types of conversations. Again, proactive versus reactive. You'll be so thankful in the case that you need it. You'll have it in place. And a lot less stress. I can guarantee that.
I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. So I'd say that's probably the main place to find me. But yeah.
Perfect.
Happy to connect.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And for all of our listeners, have a great day.
Thanks, Andrea.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and review, and we'll catch you on the next episode. If you're looking for more content or resources in the meantime, check out our website for information, blogs, and our I've Got a Spreadsheet for That series. That's thecashflowcfo.com. Again, thecashflowcfo.com. We can't wait to hear from you.